Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Ora Premanandi Hari Hari. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Nasta Prayesha Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sivayam Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the 6th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 1, the history of the life of Ajamila. Text 61. Drishtva tam kamaliptena bahuna padirambitam jagamarichaya vasham sahasaiva mimohitah. Drishtvatam kamaliptena bahuna parirambitam jagamarichaya vyasham sahasaiva vimohita. Drishtvatam kamaliptena bahuna parirambitam jagamarichaya vasham sahasaiva vimohita. Ishtvatam kamaliptena
Drishtva tam kamaliptena Vamna parirambitam Ramavishayamisam Sahasraiva vimohitah.
Ladies,
Drishtva tam
Kamaliptena
Vamna parirambitam Ramavishayamisam
Saiva vimohita Ishtata vimohitena Bahuna parirambita Ramahichaya vasham Saiva vimohita. Drishtva, by seeing, tam, her, the prostitute, kamaliptena, decorated with turmeric to incite lusty desires, bahuna, with the arm, parirambitam, embraced, jagama, went, hritshaya, of lusty desires within the heart, vasham, under the control, sahasa, suddenly, eva, indeed, vimohitaha, being illusioned. Translation: the Shudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamila saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. Purport: it is said that if one's body is smeared with turmeric, it attracts the lusty desires of the opposite sex. The word kamaliptena indicates that the Shudra was decorated with turmeric smeared on his body. Next verse. As far as possible, he patiently tried to remember the instructions of the Shastras, not even to see a woman. With the help of this knowledge and his intellect, he tried to control his lusty desires. That because of the force of Cupid within his heart, he failed to control his mind. Purport: unless one is very strong in knowledge, patience, and proper bodily, mental, and intellectual behavior, controlling one's lusty desires is extremely difficult. Thus, after seeing a man embracing a young woman and practically doing everything required for sex life, even a fully qualified Brahmana, as described above, could not control his lusty desires and restrain himself from pursuing them. Because of the force of materialistic life, to maintain self-control is extremely difficult unless one is specifically under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service. Text 63. Tannimitta smara vyaja graha grasto vicetanaha tam eva manasadhyayam swadharma viraramaha. In the same way that the sun and moon are eclipsed by a low planet, the Brahmana lost all his good sense. Taking advantage of this situation, he always thought of the prostitute, and within a short time he took her as a servant in his house and abandoned all the relative principles of a Brahmana. Purport: by speaking this verse, Shukadeva Goswami wants to impress upon the mind of the reader that Ajamila's exalted position as a Brahmana was vanquished by his association with the prostitute, so much so that he forgot all his Brahminical activities. Nevertheless, at the end of his life, by chanting the 4 syllables of the name Narayana, he was saved from the gravest danger of falling down. Swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Even a little devotional service can save one from the greatest danger. Devotional service which begins with chanting of the holy name of the Lord is so powerful that even if one falls down from the exalted position of a Brahmana through sexual indulgence, he can be saved from all calamities if he somehow or other chant the holy name of the Lord. This is the extraordinary power of the Lord's holy name. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, it is advised that one not forget the chanting of the holy name even for a moment. Satatam kirtayantomam yatantaschadridhavrataha. There are so many dangers in this material world that one may fall down from an exalted position at any time. Yet one keeps himself always. That if one can keep himself always pure and steady in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, he will be safe without a doubt. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksharum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opens my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble respect to obeisance and to him. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is the story of the life of Ajamila. Very instructive to everyone. How careful one should be in relation to the attraction to the material energy, So, Ajamila, his fall down was accidental in the sense that he didn't make plans to see this. It just happened to him. He was coming back from collecting flowers from the forest to worship, to help his father was a Brahmana. He's a Brahmana. So Brahmana, naturally, they worship the Lord, isn't it? Unless they are Mayavadis, impersonalists. But there is no such mention about Ajamil to be an impersonalist, as far as I know. So that means, by trying to remember the Shastra, means he tried to remember all the verses in relation to control the mind, the senses, Vishayato Vishayam Pumsam Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kama Krodha Vijayate. That's a verse from Bhagavad Gita. By contemplating the object of the senses, one feel attraction. And that attraction, makes him, lusty. And when desire are not fulfilled, then he become angry. Anger comes. That's true, It's not only in relation to sex life, in relation to any material hankering desire. If you don't get what you want, you get angry, like that. Mm-hmm. So, and the thing is, contemplating the object of the senses with the desire to enjoy them, is a different thing from the fact that a devotee who's situated in devotional service, he doesn't see the object of the senses as an object of his enjoyment. Rather, he sees everything as the property of the Lord, not to be enjoyed by himself, but everything shall be for the service of the Lord. So he's protected in that way. But Prabhupada, in some places, he say that he's worried about his young disciples going out on the street to preach and seeing half-naked girls on the street, and he's worried that Ajamil happened to him. They may happen to them also, but he was praying that they will be protected, since they are preaching Krishna conscious movement. Nrsimhadev, Lord Chaitanya will protect them from such fall down. So, I mean to say, poor Ajamil, he was a victim in this case, he was young, of course, and the Cupid in his heart, awakened, and he could not he tried, to use his intellect, remember Shastra, but he couldn't do it. Once that worm of lusty desire entered the heart, it's very difficult to control it, It's very, very difficult, So, Cupid have 5 arrows. Have you heard about that? No? Taste, sight, all the senses, So he attacked all the senses with those lusty desires. And then the person become victim, of them, So, remember the story of Lord Shiva after he lost his wife Sati due to Daksha's offense. He was doing tapasya, he was doing austerities, but Sati was reborn as Parvati. So the demigod asked her to help them because they needed a commander-in-chief to fight the demons. And they thought if she marries Lord Shiva, they will have a great commander, Of course, that was Kartikeya, And she agreed because, she remembered the past life as the wife of Lord Shiva. But Lord Shiva was in full meditation. So the devatas asked the help of Kamadev, Cupid, to help them. So it is said that Shiva was so powerful in controlling the senses that Parvati was even touching his genitals and he was not affected by at all. So it's like an example of self-control, Lord Shiva, and Cupid was throwing arrows at Shiva to make him lusty, to awaken his lust in his heart. But Shiva broke his meditation and he was angry at Kamadev, to disturb him. And just by looking at him, he burned his body into ashes. Very powerful, Lord Shiva. So, anyway, of course, Kamadeva was reborn as whom? Pradyumna. Now the question, Pradyumna was Krishna's son. Was he actually Kamadev? No. Actually, Kamadev is an expansion of Pradyumna. So actually, Pradyumna is Vishnu Tattva. So Kamadev entered this body when he was born as Pradyumna. So these are details given in the Shastra. So now Pradyumna was kidnapped by a demon and thrown in the ocean. You know the pastime in Krishna book? And a big fish swallowed him. And one fisherman caught the fish and gave it to Yavana king who eat fish. And the cook was cutting the fish in the kitchen, huge, big fish, and he found a small baby in it. So that was Pradyumna, Krishna's son. And a girl there took care of him, like a motherly affection, a servant there in the palace. But he grew up immediately. After a few days, he grew up, to be 16 years old, young, beautiful, man. And the girl who was taking care of him started to express her attraction to him. So he was surprised. You first show me motherly affection, now you're showing affection as, as a lover. Why is that? That's not proper, She told him, well, because I was your wife in your past life, so that's natural for me. She was the wife of Cupid in her past life. So this, to say, but one interesting thing that Lord Shiva taught everyone is that he wanted to see the form of Mohini Murti, Krishna as a woman, Lord Vishnu as a woman, because he was not able to see that, because after he was asked to help the devatas to drink the poison, he left. He didn't stay there. He didn't have to take part. Brahma and Shiva don't take part in all the devatas' activity. That's not for them. They are on a higher position. No? So he heard about the Mohini Murti, but he didn't see it. So he was curious to know, and he went with his wife to ask Lord Vishnu to show him his form as Mohini. But Vishnu told him, are you sure you want to see this? Shiva, yes, I'm very, curious to know your form as so beautiful. You must be very beautiful as a lady. Anyway, to please Lord Shiva, Vishnu took the form of Mohini Murti. And she was playing with the ball, and the wind blew up and uncovered her, upper dress and things like that. And Shiva, in front of his wife, became totally bewildered. He was chasing after her, And Mohini Murti purposely passed in front of the hermit of the sages, of the rishis, so they will see Lord Shiva chasing a lady, And he's so famous for self-control, Anyway, so to make long story short, Shiva actually discharged, semen, and they became gold and silver mines. That's described in the Bhagavatam. And he understood he was totally defeated, But he was proud to have such a powerful master as Lord Vishnu, But his illusion was not due to Mahamaya, but Yogamaya. Yogamaya. Because the form of the Lord is not material, And Lord Vishnu just wanted to prove to everyone, be careful, No matter how powerful brahmachari, sannyasi you may be and controlling the senses, even Lord Shiva became victimized, so be very careful, and like that. So that was the lesson. Now Pura Jamila is a different story, of course, and he fell victim. Prabhupada mentioned that this prostitute, during the day they work as servant at somebody's house, and at night they prostitute themselves like that. So that's why Ajamila knew where she was living. He found out, investigated, and asked her to come to his home as a servant. And of course, it is said that he was married to a nice woman, nice lady, Vaishnavi, and he threw her out of the house to keep the prostitute. And and he inherited from his father wealth and everything, and he was spending all the wealth on her, demands and all these things. And when he was without any money, he started stealing and robbing and, became a criminal, drunkard and all kind of things, He was eating the meat cooked by the prostitute, the fish, everything that she will eat, he was eating. So he became completely, totally fallen. He forgot all his, spiritual life completely. Pura Jamil, But, he was 80 years old. That means he spent so many years living with this prostitute. They didn't get married or anything. It's a prostitute, They just live together, like that. When Prabhupada started preaching in America, he found out that most of his disciples lived there with their girlfriend without being married. And Prabhupada said, that's all right, but just get married. That's my only request, Do things properly, like that. So, anyway. So, when he was 80 years old, his wife, the prostitute, was pregnant. That means she was much younger than him, to be pregnant. Anyway, one sage was going home to home asking for alms, and he came to Ajamil's house. And when he saw the woman pregnant, the sage told Ajamil, if you get a son, give him the name Narayana. So that sage was inspired by Paramatma to do this, actually. The Lord doesn't forget even the smallest service that his devotee may make, and although they may fall down and forget him, he doesn't forget them. That's the amazing story of Ajamila, that the Lord didn't, although he gave up on the Lord didn't give up on him. He found a way to rescue him, by inspiring this rishi to instruct him like that. So, being obedient to the rishi, he named the son Narayana. And that was his saving grace, because every day he will call his son. Narayan came sit in my lap, Narayan came to eat. So during the day he was chanting the name Narayana, Narayana all day. Because his chanting was unoffensive, he was not chanting to counteract the sinful activity, which is biggest offense actually. He was doing it, innocently. But that had effect. That had some effect. This chanting had some effect. So at the time of death, he was gonna. The Yamadutas came for him, to take him away. Very sinful, and he was calling his son. His son was crawling nearby him, so he was calling his son. He was in fear. He was terrified by seeing them. He was calling Narayan, Narayan. But suddenly, while chanting Narayan, he remembered the original Narayan. When that happened, then Lord Narayan sent the Vishnudutas. Save him. Save him. He chanted my name offenselessly. He should be saved. So the Vishnudutas stopped the Yamadutas. The Yamadutas were completely surprised. They were in shock that the first time that somebody stopped them from doing their service to Yamaraj, for them was bewildering completely. And they were arguing with the Vishnudutas. Why are you stopping us? This man is very sinful. He threw away his wife, married a prostitute, having children with her, eating her food, contaminated food, stealing, robbing, lying, even all kinds of sinful activities. So he's a first-class candidate for hell. You can't stop us. But the Vishnuduta counteracted. But the last moment of his life, he chanted the name of the Lord, Narayana. So now you can take him. So the argument was back and forth. Yamaduta, they have to know the code of religion, Dharma. And they gave their opinions, but they were defeated by the Vishnudutas, because devotional service is much higher than any other, Gyan or Karma activities. So they went to, and of course, although Ajamil didn't die, he didn't achieve perfection yet, He was just freed from going to hell. And by hearing the Vishnudutas, he became spiritually enlightened. So he gave up home and went to Haridwar, took shelter in a temple there, and passed the rest of his life performing devotional service. And then when he finally died, an airplane from Vaikuntha came to take him back home, back to Godhead. So finally, it was a happy ending for Ajamil, Sometimes devotees ask me, well, what about if I fall down and I name my son Krishna or Govinda? Will I be saved? I say, no, because you are planning it. If you plan it, it's not the same as happened to you accidentally, Don't take advantage of the story of Ajamila to misbehave. Rather, take advantage of be more careful, with the attraction to material energy, So anyway, then the Yamadutas went to Yamaraj, and they were asking him questions. We thought you are the supreme authority in this universe who judge, the sinful people. And Yamaraj said, but I have a higher authority than me. He preached to them. They didn't know that there was a higher authority than Yamaraj. So he preached to them that there is a higher authority than me, that's the Supreme Lord, So they became aware of that. Then he instructed them, don't ever approach any Vaishnava who chant the holy name, who use Kantimala, and he gave different instruction to them. But those who never chant and always doing sinful activity, those you can take. Bring to me. Hare Krishna. So, any comment or questions? Yes, Maharaj, please.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking, I had a question, and you kind of
Answer it.
You gave a good answer, but still I want to dig mine a little further.
Okay.
As far as the takeaway from this, where we are now in the storyline. It seems so loud, but anyway. I have firm faith in Krishna. Wait, let me finish.
Okay.
I have firm faith in Krishna. This is my storyline. I'm proposing that I have firm faith in Krishna.
I wish to have it too.
And Krishna delivers his devotees.
Yes.
I have firm faith in that. We have so many Gajendra, we have, so many stories.
Yeah.
So my takeaway from this, not that I'm intentionally chanting the holy name to commit offense. It's a subtle nuance on the point where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
My takeaway from the Ajamil story is that, okay, I'll try to be a devotee to the best of my ability. If I get distracted, something happens, I fall down, whatever, I'm distributing books at a rave and I run off with some woman, or I take a bunch of hallucinogenic and fall back into, whatever, my previous weirdness, Krishna will save me. So I don't really have to worry about it. Ultimately, Krishna will save me. I'm just going to cruise along, do the best I can. If I get picked off by the material nature, my service is there, and Krishna will save me. So I'm not worried. I'm not feeling all this stress and alienation and fear and repression.
What means to be picked up by the material energy is that you have no free will. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I mean to say we have free will, and if we don't want to fall down, we will not fall down. It's not a question of like in Ajamil's situation. He tried, but he couldn't do it. I mean, he tried his best, but he couldn't do it because of the Cupid awakener's heart. He just couldn't. But doesn't mean that if somebody used the story of Ajamil to justify, okay, also happened to me the same as Ajamil. But don't put yourself in danger. When Prabhupada went to rock concert to help opening the first San Francisco temple, he gave a lecture and chanted Hare Krishna. But when he was leaving, he said, this is not the place for brahmachari. So if you want to protect yourself, don't put yourself in a situation that you will be in danger,
So the difference.
If I understand you properly, that's a good point. The difference is that Ajamil tried, he fought.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just kind of laissez-faire, I'm going to go with the flow.
Yeah,
There's
right.
no, if you fight and lose, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But if you just toss up the white flag and say, I'm yours, take me Maya, it's not the same thing. All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're correct. Thank you, man.
I got it from you. I'm reflecting back your.
Hare Krishna. Okay, any other comments, questions? Please pass the mic to Vaikuntha Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj. This might seem a little impertinent, but it's a genuine question. Yesterday evening we were visiting a devotee family, and it's on the question of Namabas actually, because the whole Ajamil pastime, right? offenseless chanting, but not pure chanting. So they have a parrot they've actually had for over 20 years.
That's right.
And the parrot chants Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Jai Prabhupada, and lots of wonderful transcendental vibrations.
Okay.
So we were discussing, and we were just curious, because on the one hand, I think we understand that animals don't really make sinful reactions, right?
That's correct.
They're living
yeah.
them off.
That's right.
He's chanting the holy names. The holy
Yeah.
name is the potency. So we're just curious. We couldn't figure it out. What would be the destination of such a parrot?
Most probably he will be born as human being in his next life. I mean, Prabhupada tells that you can teach a parrot to chant Hare Krishna. But if a cat grabs the parrot from the neck, he will not chant Hare Krishna. He will cry out, You know? So, because he's not conscious of what he's doing, it's an animal. But the effect still will be there. He may be born a human being, and get the chance to meet the devotees, taking some prasad. Of course he's getting some prasad, he's with devotees, So definitely we'll have a human birth, to continue with this spirit.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I think the question to ask is who was, that bird is named Sukadev, by the way. We're talking about Sukadev? But yeah, so what was that bird before he became a bird? Because I think to be born in a family of devotees and get a chance, I think he's some kind of fallen brahmachari, fallen sannyas. He did something wrong, but he got to take birth in the family of devotees. There's a cycle going. So to reinforce Maharaj's answer, I think that after his birth, but there's Shastric references that in his birth as a bird now, he will get a chance to go back to what he maybe, he was he was a sannyasi in the past who whistled all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to him.
There is no loss or diminution in the practice of devotional service, no? What is the verse? Neha vikramana shosti pratyavayo navidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato vayat. There is no fear of loss or diminution in the practice of devotional service. The minimum amount of devotional service can save one from the greatest danger. But see the story of Bharat Maharaj. He was practicing devotional service and he was born as an animal because he thought of a deer at the time of death. And to prove Krishna's word to be true, yam yam bapismaram bhavam tejate ante kalevaram tam tam mevaiti kauntyasat bhava bhavita. According to our state of mind at the time of death, surely will attain that. To prove that is true, Bharat Maharaj to be born as a deer. But he was such a great devotee, he was at the stage of bhava. Even in the body of deer, Krishna didn't allow him to forget him. He was Krishna conscious even in the body of a deer. And that's very unusual. Totally unusual. No? In the case of the story of Gajendra, he forgot everything. Only at the time of greatest danger of dying, he remembered. Because he was devotee also in his past life. He was king in Indradyumna. And he made offense to whom?
Augustine.
To a powerful yogi.
Is it Augustine?
Agastya? Okay. So what happened that Indradyumna was doing arti to his deities. And the sage came in and nobody else was there to take care of the sage, So according to the instruction of the Shastra, you have to give up worshiping the Lord to take care of the guest who just arrived. You have to stop it. But Indradyumna purposely made a show that he was not seeing him. He tried to hide that he saw him, was looking somewhere else. But the Rishi, with his powerful mind, he could understand that he's faking it. So he cursed him, saying, you're acting like an animal in ignorance, become an elephant. So that's also important teaching, that we should not neglect, serving the Vaishnavas, thinking that worshiping the Lord is more important. When Krishna told in the Adi Purana to Arjuna, those who say they are my servant, they are not my servant. Those who say they are servant of my servant, they are my real servant. So, yes.
Quick note in here. This is the same parrot he's always had, Shukadev. He's at least 33 years old. Because he was living right here, and I would go there.
It's an African grey. They live along and they have the inlet of a 4-year-old. They can develop.
Haribo, there's a question here. Please pass the mic.
She has one.
Also,
And
okay.
the mic.
Please ask the question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, welcome back.
Thank
you
you.
for a wonderful class.
Hare Krishna.
So we chant to rebuild our relationship with Krishna,
Yes.
to connect with Krishna, and that's supposed to be the only desire that we should have, right? When we chant. So, but Krishna knows our heart. So you said that we shouldn't chant with the intention to remove sin, right? So, but if, what's the word?
Yeah, no.
To counteract sin.
Yes, yes.
So, but Krishna knows our heart, and if we really want, like the intention is not to remove the sin, but it's to actually connect with Krishna. So, but if we have that strong desire, Krishna, I want to purify myself so I can go back home with you.
Yes.
Again, that's not the only intention, but we really, and Krishna knows our heart. Even if we don't express it, he knows it. So,
I understand your question or comment. Actually, there is nothing wrong with chanting Hare Krishna with the desire to get purified and be free from past sinful activity, if you are determined not to do them again. The offense is that you chant the holy name to contract sinful activity, but you want to continue doing them. Then becomes the greatest offense, But if you stop doing sinful activity and you chant to get purified from your past sinful activity and develop love for Krishna, that's okay. That's correct way of thinking. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I'm just curious to know whether Ajamil had a spiritual master, or whether he was before he got involved into all this.
He was born in a Brahman family. Naturally, Brahman, they get the ceremony to receive the sacred thread as part of the tradition. In Brahmin family, there was some initiation, of course, undoubtedly.
So which means that after he got attracted to a woman, he lost all the association, like with anything which is...
When somebody becomes fallen, usually in that kind of society, they become neglected by the other people, like Prabhupada gave the example of Rupa Sanatan, they were serving the Muslim king, and they were rejected by the Orthodox Brahmins society, they neglect them, they don't care about them. Although they didn't fall down or anything, but just because they adopted the dress as Muslims, and even they given Muslim names, Sakar Malik and Dabir Kas. So the Brahmin society just rejected them. So that was very strict at that time, If a Brahmana falls down, they just don't want to have nothing to do with him, like that. So that most probably happened to Ajamil, that seeing him fallen, they just, became completely negligent with him. Although we have a different mode of doing things in ISKCON, that if a devotee has difficulty, we try to help, I remember I was temple president in South America, and one of the new Bhaktas, he left the temple, fell down. So I went with another devotee, took some Mahaprasad, to his home. We know where he lives. That's very important also to have, information of the devotees, where they live, phone number, something, so can be contacted, So we went there and gave him the money. He was very grateful. He said, oh, he was in tears. He said, I was not expecting this, you know. So he started coming again to the temple. You know. So that's very important, the compassion, no? Compassion. Yes.
A quote from 1 Canto, chapter 19, text 7. Prabhupada quoted this verse, which is very pertinent to the subject. Swapada moolam bhatatak priyasya takjanya bhava sahari paresha vikarma yacho patitam katanchit dunoti sarvam vidisannivishta. But in the books as it was printed and edited, there was no translation for that verse. But Prabhupada gave the translation.
Very good.
Let me read that, because it's a very important word. It's exactly pertinent to what you're discussing. The devotee of the Lord never commits sins willingly, but the material world is such a place that one has to commit sins even unwillingly. The finest way to save one from such accidental sins of life is to remember constantly the lotus feet of the Lord. But one who commits sins deliberately and willingly on the strength of the Lord's assurances for saving does commit the maximum amount of sins, and therefore is not delivered even by constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord. Such willful offender has no chance of being freed from the clutches of fruit of action.
Thank you for quoting that very pertinent verse. So, yeah. Once Prabhupada was asked by a devotee, Prabhupada, when a fall down can be considered accidental? And Prabhupada's answer was, if he comes back to Krishna consciousness, that fall down was accidental. But Prabhupada took long time, doesn't matter. If he comes back, that was accidental. You know, that was Prabhupada's answer to that question. I mean, by the power of material energy, you know, or bad association, and maturity, you know, and maturity in spiritual advancement, maybe Kanishtadhikari, neophyte devotees, usually Madhyamadhikaris, Uttamadhikari, usually they don't fall down, unless they commit a very serious offense against the Vaishnava, you know, or the Lord, or something like that. Generally speaking, Ajamila was a neophyte devotee, also. Kanishtadhikari, he wasn't so advanced. But he was devotee nonetheless, you know. And he didn't justify or try to, you know, to go along with it that, okay, Krishna will save me anyway. No. So thank you for quoting that, very, very important. Yes.
Now, you and I both have to go for this presentation by Niranjana Swami.
Definitely, yes.
But I just, if you have time, you know, one quote is not the case make, because you've also got people who willfully have fallen down.
Yes.
And they also come back to Krishna consciousness. I'm not advocating that as a path, obviously.
Yes.
But it's not that, you know, whatever, people only come back if they accidentally fall down. We have people who, you know, grab Maya with both hands with full intent, and also came back to Krishna consciousness.
But Prabhupada said that also, due to the powerful material energy and bad habits from the past, you know, bad association, one may fall down willingly in the sense that he just couldn't control himself, you know. But if he comes back, then that means he has some sincerity, you know.
All right, if we define it that way, I'm on board.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not like a bad person want to commit sin. It's just very weak and very neophyte.
And like you said, it's heavily conditioned.
Yeah, it's very conditioned. So it's not justification. It's just try to understand that we have to be compassionate and try to understand the devotee may go through difficulties, and we should give them, you know, try to best help we can, you know. Sometimes the fallen devotee tell me, I wanted to come back to temple, or at least visit, but devotee look bad at me. They treat me badly because I'm fallen. I don't want to come back.
I just wanted to mention,
Yeah.
because there's the history and the lore and all this stuff.
Yeah.
One of the things that Tamal Krishnamurti,
One of the things that quietly I found out after Tamal Krishna Maharaj had passed away, because there was a conversation on the GBC and this stuff like that. There were a number, many, and who knows how many there were in total, but there were at least 30 people, nice devotees, who said, I drifted away from the temple, or, my wife and I had to get a job, and I was working as a coal miner in Wales, and, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj quietly came, stayed in their house, got them to chant again. He was really quite moving to see the depth of his compassion to save other devotees, and quietly, no advertisement, and really put himself out. Like there was literally a devotee in Wales who was working as a coal miner. Devotees didn't even know who he was. Tamal said, "Where's that nice devotee?" They said, "Oh, he got married and we haven't seen him. I think he's living in Wales." Tamal figured it out. Went to see the guy, spent a week in his house.
Yeah.
So, I'm reinforcing the value of what you're saying.
Thank you.
Giving association.
I just remember a story by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta related to what you're saying. The Srila Bhakti Siddhanta came to install the deities when the big Bag Bazaar temple, huge big marble temple was opened in Calcutta. Some very wealthy men donated huge amount of money, and when he arrived, he asked for one brahmachari disciple. That was in Bangladesh. Thank you for. Okay, it was anyway.
principle's the same, go on.
Yeah, okay. So he asked about one brahmachari disciple, and he was told that he left the temple. He asked why, because he was, chatting with the lady in a very frivolous way, and one sannyasi got in his cage, chastised him very heavily, and he feeling ashamed, he left. And Bhaktisiddhanta became very sad. He said, what is the use of this big temple if I can't save this one soul? I will change all this for, When the disciples saw him so sad, and concerned for this disciple, they decided to find him out, where he was. And they found out what was his profession before becoming devotee. And he was fixing watches. So, in those places, all the shops usually are on the same place, and that's one thing in India, cloth merchants all the same together, So they went shop to shop where they sell and fix watches, and they found him. And they brought some Prasad with them, Guru Maharaj asking about you. So the devotee became very emotional.
Especially Bengalis, they got those soft hearts.
Yeah. So he was crying. He said, I was crying every day because I left the association of devotee. But I felt ashamed to go back because of my misbehavior. But since you came, and I want to go back. So they took him. And the Guru was very happy.
Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was so upset that they had treated him in this way.
Yeah.
He said, we're not going to open the temple until you find this boy.
Yes. Prabhupada himself, or Prabhupada, he made a comment that I'm writing this book, preaching to make people devotees, and when they come and become devotees, you mistreat them and drive them away. So I am very concerned about this. I have seen it in many places. Some devotees are too judgmental, too fanatical, and somebody just make a little mistake, they just want to smash, and that's so bad. I feel so bad about it, but I couldn't do nothing about it because it already happened. So, but it's a great concern in our movement. Some devotees don't know how to treat properly others. Yes.
Of course, that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
to be a repeated nonsense and a thorn and, hey, would you have to tolerate me, Okay, that's
No, no,
another.
of
But
course
what I
not.
wanted to share, because you and I got to go.
Yeah.
What I wanted to share was Govardhan Prabhu, Prabhupada's Govardhan,
Yes.
got, turned Ambarish. I mean, Ambarish was naturally coming anyway, but he was really the mentor that brought Ambarish into a full-time devotee. Govardhan found that building, the Detroit temple, which Srila Prabhupada really liked, and, got that building. He was a fantastic pujari. He did a lot of have these effulgence, this idea of effulgence, that, these back, behind the deity, that came from Govardhan. And Prabhupada really liked it, So Prabhupada was very fond of Govardhan. There's so many stories I could tell. Govardhan got the building. Prabhupada came the first time to the Detroit, Devasiddhan Mandir, the Detroit temple. And then he went away. Prabhupada came back, I think it was a year later, and Govardhan had gone away. Govardhan was, anyway, it's a long story. It was tough for him to manage people and be a devotee, and he just wanted to be a pujari. So he'd gone back to his father's house. Prabhupada showed up, and, a year later, after they got the building, Prabhupada showed up and said, where is Govardhan? And the devotee said, oh, Prabhupada's gone back to his parents' house. And Prabhupada said, why? And they said, well, Prabhupada wasn't chanting. Oh, no. So then Prabhupada said, so go and get him. And they said, well, Prabhupada wasn't even chanting. Prabhupada said, how do I know you're chanting? That's exactly what I was there. So, and Prabhupada would not let him off the hook, would not let us off the hook.
No.
He said, go and find him and bring him back.
Yeah.
And it's the same kind of thing. I mean, some people are just, they need to soak for a while. But Govardhan, when he heard that Prabhupada had sent us to him to bring him back, he also began to cry, came right back.
Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hare Krishna.